I am Larry Pearson, and call sign is Hoss, Boss Hoss, if you will. And I was leader of the Blue Angels 84 and 85. I came into the Navy as a NAVCAD. I was at the University of Texas. I was in Air Force ROTC, and they told me in the physical that my sitting height was too high. I couldn't be a pilot. And the colonel in charge of Air Force ROTC, and he says, "It's no problem. I'll get you a waiver." And I said, "Okay, Colonel. When you get me the waiver, I'll sign the contract." And I was in a 5-year aeronautical engineering program at the University of Texas. And so I went on, and I'm just doing my own thing, and about a month, 2 months later, the Colonel calls me in his office and says, "Hey, you got to sign this contract today or drop." I said, "Colonel, did you get my waiver so I can be a pilot?" He said, "No, but don't worry about that." He said, "You can be a navigator your first tour and then go pilot training after that." I said, "Colonel, if I can't be a pilot, I don't want to be in your Air Force." And I dropped. I walked across the hall to Navy ROTC. I walked into the reception desk there, and there was a second-class petty officer, and then I said, "Hey, you guys have a sitting height restriction for your pilots?" And this young petty officer, he knew his stuff. He said, "No, we don't. We have an overall height restriction, 6'5". You're well under that." And he takes me back and introduces me to a lieutenant. I sat down there and talked with this guy for about a half hour. He reaches down the bottom drawer and pulls out an airline ticket, and they flew me to Dallas that weekend. I went to Dallas, and I took the physical and the written tests and the psychiatry tests, you know, all of that stuff. Then I go back to school. I don't think anything about it. 3 months later, I get a letter from the Navy. I've been accepted for pilot training. Now, my dad, who was a World War II bomber guy, you know, I mean, I'd always thought I was going to be Air Force. I called him. I said, "Hey, Dad, I just been accepted to Navy pilot training. What do you think?" Long pause. Now, my dad was a POW in World War II. You know, when Vietnam was going on, you know, he came back and said, "Sounds like what you always wanted." And so went in the Navy, and the Navy was wonderful. I was a commanding officer of a fighter squadron. We did an around-the-world cruise, and actually the Blue Angel boss selection process is a little different, but because I was on cruise when they had all of the blue boss applicants into Corpus Christi to sit down with the board and interview and whatnot, I couldn't go. Well, we pulled into Italy, into Naples, and we were going to be there for 5 days, and then we're going up to Nice in France, and we're going to be there for a week. Sinatra flew me from Italy to Corpus Christi and back, and I did a one-on-one interview, and I got selected. Absolutely the best trip from Corpus Christi back to Rome I ever had in my life. But so I got selected, and then we get back off of this cruise in September, and 2 weeks later, change of command. I turn over the squadron, and I go to San Francisco to join the Blue Angels. And I mean, what a trip! But I had gotten checked out in the A4 before I left Miramar at the Adversary Squadron, VF 126. So when I got to the Blues, I was current in the A4. So I get to fly the spare jet from Pensacola to Deer Valley, Arizona. And while I'm there, I get a ride in the slot. Kevin Miller was a slot pilot that year, and so I'm riding with him. It was the wildest thing I ever experienced in my life. There wasn't one spare second, and the boss was on the radio all the time. I mean, holy smokes. And I thought, "Pearson, you've really overloaded yourself this time. There's no way you can learn how to do this." And I was scared. I mean, to be upfront, I was scared that I was going to fail. But the training program is so good and so intense, and you start at 2,000 feet with 2 airplanes, 1 and 2, and this Marine that was flying my right wing, Mark Loritzen Skinner, he was so good. I mean, he's 3 feet away from me, and he's critiquing my roll. That roll rate's a little slow, boss, you know. And how in the world does he know that? How can he focus on anything except my airplane when he's that close, you know? But the training program is so good. It's a building block approach, you know, and you don't move on to the next maneuver, and you don't lower the altitudes until you've done that level of the training perfect. And that's in each cockpit. So it's a great program. You know, in 84 and 85, we were flying A4s. They were getting very old. similar to what's going on today with the F-18s that the current team is flying. And so that was a challenge. It's a maintenance challenge, and they're behind the scenes, you know, we were looking to transition to F-18s clear back then. We were focused on training, and I got to tell you, when I came in as the new commanding officer and flight leader of the Blue Angels, the most intimidating thing I ever did in my life. And I'd been a commanding officer of a fighter squadron, been there, done that, but I got into the Blues and I thought, I'm not sure I can do this. And learning to fly as a new boss, that was very, very challenging. Hardest thing I ever did. And so that took, honestly, 98% of my focus. Learning how to fly good, safe Blue Angel air shows, and we'll worry about, you know, what comes next down the road. But the training program is so superb. The people are just unbelievable, the quality of people that we get. We had a fatal accident in 1985. Mike Gershon was killed, and that was the most devastating thing I ever went through. And the strength and character of the Blue Angels, you know, really carried us through. Barry and Dink, you know, and going to see his wife and his brand new baby, you know, the day after he was killed. And then his mother the next day, who lived in Pensacola. That was the hardest thing. But the guys and gals on the team, they were so strong. Their character was so good that we were able to go through that, and we went through that as a team. You know, and there was certainly individual grief. There was for me, but it was something that we worked through, and we were supported up our chain of command too. We decided we canceled the next show, and we did not fly, which, you know, for the Blue Angels is very, very hard to do because you lose those skills. They're so perishable. But we buried Dink here, and then the next day we got in our jets and flew to Ohio for an air show. And we were able to put it behind us, but that was the most challenging thing people-wise, you know, and obviously something that I'll never forget, and I don't think anybody on the team at that time would.